Yeah, I mean, imagine if you and I never gave much thought to what we were eating. We'd still be doing the pizza rolls and the donuts, and we'd probably look about 20 years older than we do, and we'd be falling apart at this point of our lives. I mean,
Yeah.
but we'd be sitting here going, yeah, I don't know what to do. I mean, I'm just following what my body says.
And of course, because of this, we can't overlook an entire industry that's trying to come to the rescue here, the pharmaceutical industry,
Yeah.
which is what this Nightline show was about, basically. Big Pharma stepping in to try to solve this problem in America, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they had one sales, well, I guess he was like the CEO of one of these drug companies. He says, "We want you to lose your weight in a safe fashion and keep the weight off." And of course, they noted that this means taking these drugs in perpetuity, basically for the rest of your life, if you're going to rely on the drugs to suppress your appetite, to make you feel full, to regulate your metabolism. I mean, these are like the main aspects of what these drugs do. If you have to rely on that pharmaceutical, then you've got to keep on taking it, right?
Yeah, yeah. And do you think there's ever a time when it is appropriate to prescribe drugs to somebody that's obese?
You know, the obesity is the result, again, of all these different habits that people have built up in their minds, their subconscious minds, and how they relate to their own emotions, right? Or they don't relate to their own emotions. And I think the most important thing is to connect with your true self in these matters, your more authentic part of yourself. And in our book, Healthy Mind, Fit Body, we actually have a whole week program to deal with this. It's using the sentence completion technique that was really perfected by Nathaniel Branden. He has whole workbooks on it. But I designed it so that you could actually explore the different facets of, this weight struggle that people have and get to the root of it, basically, because I think the drugs, and in the realm of psychotherapy, people prescribe psychotropic drugs for all kinds of reasons, severe depression and major anxiety, panic attacks, things like that. But they're kind of a band-aid, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And there's no substitute for actually getting in touch with your own emotions and discovering new habits of relating to yourself. And I think that's the most important part psychologically, because if we just rely on pharmaceuticals, we're not getting at the root of what actually caused the problem.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also, you're saving a lot of money by introspecting and working through these things. I mean,
Yeah.
I imagine that especially at first, those drugs are not going to be cheap. And then to say that people need to be on them their whole lives, I mean, yeah, I just,
Oh, but insurance will cover it, Kevin.
oh, yeah,
Other people will cover the expenses there.
of course. Yeah, we'll just rely on insurance companies and maybe government would cover it too.
Oh, yes, that's going to be courtesy of the government, which actually, where do they get their money? From productive people in the populace, or they just print it out. That's a whole nother issue.
But it goes back to responsibility. I mean, it's just, this idea that someone else is going to take care of you and, it's all going to be kind of figured out for you. I mean, that just doesn't work, obviously.
It's inherently disempowering, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
This whole, business about healthcare, the healthcare industry, and how people are going to be taken care of by other people. I mean, this is what ingenious people do in the marketplace if they're free to actually operate their businesses in a way that they want to, rather than how regulators and busybodies and political do-gooders think that they should be providing those things. So again, it's multifaceted, but in relation to your own health and well-being, there's no substitute to actually focusing on what really matters in your own life, taking responsibility for these things.
Taking responsibility, yeah.
So, do you think these drugs are at all efficacious? Because in this piece that Nightline did, they basically showed that these two, at least the two people they interviewed, had lost substantial amounts of weight.
Yeah, I mean, that's impressive, but then how long are they going to be able to keep it off after they stop taking the drugs? Or is it just that they're supposed to keep taking the drugs forever?
You got to keep people in a crisis, chronic disease state so that you can keep on feeding them drugs, you see. This is how the healthcare industry works, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we still don't know what the side effects of these drugs are. I mean, are we going to rely on the FDA to keep us safe? I mean, that hasn't worked out too well in the past. So, there's that issue too.
Yeah, every drug has a side effect. It doesn't matter what the drug is. It's always going to have a trade-off there.
Exactly.
And again, this problem is caused essentially by eating habits and by misinformation out there because as we've noted in previous podcasts and in the book, most people don't have the correct nutritional information to understand the nature of how fat gets deposited into fat cells and how it's kept there
Yeah.
by what you eat, basically, by having higher insulin levels. I mean, insulin is that storage hormone for fat. It converts the carbs to fat. And the fat actually doesn't make you fat. We've covered that too. So
Yeah.
this nutritional misinformation and oftentimes disinformation actually keeps people unhealthy. And then, of course, leave it to the pharmaceutical companies to come to the rescue with a bigger band-aid.
Yeah, in fact, we were talking a little bit before the show, drug addiction. Maybe we need more drugs to keep away from drug addiction. I mean, where do you stop? I mean, it gets pretty crazy.
Yeah, there are drugs that are substitutes for the actual black market drugs. But that's obviously not taking responsibility either. Because again, when we look at the nature of health and wellness and fitness, it's more a psychological process than it is some sort of disease state that can be fixed with drugs.